When I look at what everyone in this room does, and then someone is that excellent and does things so beautifully, I think it's fantastic. It's just another reason why we all chose this profession. It's the reason we're all in this profession, to strive to be the best we can be, and it's pretty neat. I understand they had the big assistants tournament yesterday, and a few guys shot 69 and all that lousy weather and stuff. Congrats to them too. It's cool.
It's neat. Hey, Butch, before we get into this, we were talking a little bit about your father and how he held the club and how the other gentlemen of his era held the golf club. I think it'd be interesting for everybody to just share that.
Sure. Mike and I were talking off camera about Dustin Johnson's position at the top, and I touched on it a little bit this morning when I said my dad played from there. Well, my dad held the club. Now that I sat down, I probably can't get back up, so I'm just going to show you. Instead of putting his thumb on the shaft this way, he held the thumb off the shaft like this, like a baseball bat, and then he interlocked that, and you could see the thumb was off the shaft, and he would forward press it and go to the top, and the club was dead shut, and he would just bring it right back down to that same position. Now, he's very strong in his arms, and if he wanted to draw a ball, he would just roll that wrist over. If he wanted to fade it, he'd just make his knuckles go to the sky a little. So when that gentleman asked me that question about Dustin Johnson, I had seen someone play really good from there. Trevino played from there. Duval played from there. A lot of great players played from there. But Dad's grip was unusual. When he was 14, he was a Florida State amateur champion, not junior champion, men's champion at 14. And he said he was on the beach with some buddies throwing a football around, and he sprained his thumb. So he just took it off the shaft. And he played that way his whole life, except for bunker shots and pitch shots. Then he put the thumb back on the shaft, which was weird. But I think Sarazen played like that. Henry Pickard played that way. A lot of the old-timers played that way. I mean, I can't hit a shot that way. I've tried. My brother Dick could play like that. I couldn't do it. So I had seen that position most of my life, along with getting my butt kicked with all those good stories he was laying on me when I was a kid. So I'd seen somebody play pretty good from there.
Kevin Sprecher asked a question. You just touched on bunkers, and obviously wing foot has been a very important part of your life. Your father's influence in the game, you shared with with us earlier. What was it about wing foot? What was it about your father? Why did he put his thumb there for bunker play? And what would you tell all of us and how we would be able to assist people in improving bunker play for others?
Well, if you look at the two jobs Dad had, wing foot in the summer, Seminole in the winter, I mean, these are two of the most difficult bunkered golf courses in the world, big lips where you have to hit high, soft shots. And so he perfected a method to play that way. And his theory was he wanted you to open the club face at impact and then take your grip and make your left hand very weak, meaning it's right on top of the shaft. You know, you can get people to open the club face, then they put their normal grip on it, and it's going to come back closed. And his feeling was that you always came from the inside, not outside and across, because that way you could spank the sand with your right hand and let your right hand release down the target line. And Dad was such a good bunker player that it was actually ridiculous how good. I mean, we were all good, but he was unreal. He used to do these outings. Stockbrokers used to have an outing every day at Winged Foot, and they'd go, I know most of you all played Winged Foot, and he'd go out on the 18th green on the East course, and because it's right in front of the veranda there, and everybody could have their drinks out there, and he'd do this bunker clinic. When he wanted to end the clinic, he'd just hold one. And within 2 or 3 of when he wanted to end it, he'd hold one. So he'd hold one, and he'd say, okay, guys, that's it, blah, blah, blah. So there was this one guy, and he had had a little too much to drink, and he's looking at the 9th West screen, which is all the way across 75 yards away from the 18th on the East course. And he said, well, what would you do, Mr. Harmon, if you had to go that green over there? He said, well, I'd have to get another club because I couldn't play this shot. He goes, well, the guy was being a real jerk. And he said, well, what if that was the only club you had? He said, what do you think, I'm playing with one club and I don't have 14? I mean, you know, you change clubs. He explained how he would hit the shot. He goes, well, what if you had to hit it with this club? So I was an assistant pro then, and I'm saying, this is going to be good right here. So he says, all right, I'll try it with this one. He hole it. 75 yards away with a 56-degree sand, one bounce in the hole, and he looked at the guy and says, even you can understand that. Now let's go get a drink. The damnedest thing I've ever seen. He said, I couldn't do that again if I tried it 1,000 times. I said, well,
your dad had a keen sense of humor, and I remember you sharing a story with me about reading the paper when you came downstairs and he was looking for your score. Just share that with everybody.
Yeah, I told him about he would tell us all the time that he'd read the paper upside down because we were at the bottom. I got to get in a little different position here, sorry. he had a great way with his assistants. You know, the assistants, when you worked at Wingfoot and you worked for my dad or at Seminole, they could all play pretty good. And every now and then a guy would shoot 80 or 81 in a Monday Pro-Am. And of course, it's in the paper Tuesday morning. And I remember when Jay Revere and Jimmy Burke were there years ago, and Jimmy had shot 82 or something in a Pro-Am, and he came in, and Dad goes, hoo, nice score yesterday, Jim. 82. Oh, you know, Claude, I tried as hard as I could on every shot. He said, well, that's great, but your first 4 lessons read at 2 and they canceled. So let me help you out. The next time you're going to shoot 82, might be in your best interest to get a rib injury or a wrist injury before you sign your card, okay? Don't worry about those kind of no cards, he says. He used to tell me as I got older, and I would try and play in tournaments, he'd say, damn, but you're the alphabet pro. Somebody said, what's that? He said, well, you don't have any numbers next to your name. You got DNS, DQ'd. I mean, he's the damn alphabet pro. You never put a number next to your name.
Who other than your father had the greatest influence on your instruction?
John Jacobs did. John Jacobs wrote a book back in the 70s, and it's if you can get it, it's one of the practical golf. It's one of the best books you could ever read. It's all about path and club face angle, and I've had one forever, and I've got all stuff highlighted in it. And everybody who comes to work for me, I make them read it because I think it's so simple. You can't find it. It's hard to find it, but if you can find it, it's a great book. Mr. Jacobs has been a dear friend of mine forever. He's 91 or 2 now. He had a birthday a few weeks ago. I called him, and his health isn't very good, but he's such a wonderful guy, and he had this beautiful way of explaining stuff in an English accent, an English tone, and he was just like my dad. He made it very simple. I won an award a couple of years ago over there for teaching. And John hadn't been to the British Open in a long time, and he came to present me the award. And it's one of the most humbling things that's ever happened to me in my life. I've got a picture at home of he and I sitting on this couch, and I'm holding this award. And we must have talked for an hour and a half about golf swings, just modern day swings and how good the players are today. I think that's what's cool about a lot of the old timers. A lot of them that are a little jealous of the amount of money that the kids make today, but most of them really admire how good these kids are because you have no idea. There's a bunch of you in this section that are good players that have played in big tournaments, but you have no idea how hard it is to hit a great shot under all this pressure. Dad used to have a great line, Mike, he would say, he says, you're going to find out how good you are when you get out on that tour and you're on the back nine on Sunday and you got this important shot and that red light on that camera is burning a hole in your forehead and you know it's burning a hole in your forehead and you know you're on TV and you got to deliver. And it's not always as easy as you think, as we saw, unfortunately, for Jordan Spieth on Sunday.
You bring up Jordan Spieth. Obviously, we were witness to something that was also a little bit disturbing, and that was Ernie Els. When you look at those two situations, which do you think is harder to come back from? And what do you think we end up seeing out of Ernie?
Well, I think Jordan's young enough where, it'll affect him, but it'll affect him in a way where it'll piss him off and he'll get better at it. Ernie's was really hard to watch. I actually told our director when we showed it the one time, I said, please don't run that in again. I said, that's difficult to watch. We're not trying to make fun of one of the great players of the world, but I guess I've never had the yips, so it's hard for me to understand it. I've had them a little bit with chipping every now and then. You get a little. I've never had it with a putter, but some of you in this room that have had them, it's tough, boy. It's not easy to explain that your hands won't go, and all the mental coaches in the world aren't going to help you for that. I mean, these I love these old timers talking about mental coach. Tour players that have their full swing coach, their short swing coach, their mental coach, their nutritionist, their physical fitness coach. You need a Greyhound bus to travel all these guys to the tournaments in. And Jackie Burke had the greatest line ever back in the days. Oh yeah, Demerit and we had a great mental coach. His name was Jack Daniels. He was waiting for us after every round. I'll tell you what, he cured everything. Don't worry about it. So I have a saying, before we go any further, I meant to tell you this earlier. I have a saying that I coined a few years ago about how it's never the player's fault. It's always somebody's fault. I said, okay, long or short, caddy's fault, bad yardage. Left or right, coach's fault, bad swing mechanics. Bad decision, head coach. Get injured, trainer's fault. show up in a bad mood, wife or girlfriend, or both's fault.
Butch, what's your proudest moment as a coach? I know you shared that thing with John Jacobs. I'm sure that
I
was...
think for me, I used to tell Tiger Woods when he was an amateur, I remember my dad saying, my dad won the Masters by 5 shots when he won in 1948. And on Sunday, he finished the front nine, made 2 at 6, 3 at 7, 3 at 8, and he stood on the 10th tee with an 8-shot lead. And he said it was the greatest feeling in the world walking up the 72nd hole with a 5-shot lead, knowing that you couldn't lose. And I remember in '97 when Tiger broke the record, I said, someday you're going to have that feeling, Tiger. You're going to walk up the 18th hole with such a big lead, and it was. And I can remember standing behind the 18th green, behind his mom and dad, and sun wasn't out. It was overcast, it was late, but I still had my sunglasses on because there was a tear in my eye because it actually happened. And you may not remember this, but he shot 40 in his opening round that day. He shot 40-30 and went on to break the record. And I think for me, that was a great moment in a way, only because we had talked about the opportunity. Greg winning the Open Championship at Royal St. George's in '93, breaking the record, and the round he shot on Sunday, 64 on a 20-mile-an-hour wind, and missed an 18-incher on the 17th hole trying to get out of Bernhard Langer's way. And just watching him play, and then when Phil won a few years ago at Muirfield, because he never thought he could win an Open Championship because he's a high ball hitter and he would never buy into playing the ball on the ground, and I finally convinced him to do that, and he won the Scottish Open the year before. And the way I did it was, I said, look, you're one of the most creative players I've ever seen in my life. I can't believe you can't figure out how to play links golf. And to watch him do what he did on Sunday, to shoot one of the best rounds ever to win, and hear him talk about that was his finest win, those were fun times. And I've been so lucky, Michael. I mean, I've taught the best players in the world, and I've learned as much from them as they've learned from me. I am today in my teaching because of being with all these guys, from picking their brains and understand how they do stuff and learning and then passing it on. It's the reason I wanted to ask you guys so many questions today, because we're just trading information. This is how we get better. You listen to someone who does it one way that's been successful. It doesn't mean that's the only way to do it. I'm here to tell you, the way I do stuff may not be the right or wrong way to do it. It's just the way I do it. And I've had a lot of success at doing it, and I like sharing that with you. But I like hearing your feedback on how you guys do stuff too.
You've shared many times that the influence of Jose Maria and obviously Greg Norman for short game was really influential. I can't imagine the irony of 1997, how proud you were that at Augusta, and just the year prior, we're seeing what happens with Greg. Ooh. And that had to have been one of the hardest moments.
Longest day I've ever spent on a golf course. He had a 6-shot lead with 18 to play. And it's interesting, Tony Navarro, his caddy, and I have always said that Greg Norman that left Sunday night was not the same guy that showed up. Left Saturday night was not the same guy that showed up Sunday. Something happened, and he never admitted it. And I read an article a month ago where he actually said that. He said, yeah, something happened Saturday night that I probably should have talked to Butch and Tony about, but I didn't, and it bothered me all day long. Now, I don't know whether he and Laura got in a fight or whether whatever happened or something, but he was out of sync mentally all day. It was the same thing we saw with Jordan Spieth the other day. Mentally, he wasn't there a lot of the times. And on a hard golf course, especially Augusta, if it's windy, your mind has to be 100% on every shot you hit. Because the guys were talking about how hard it was to make a 3 or 4 footer when you're playing an extra inch of windage for the ball because the wind was blowing so much. But 96 was the longest day I've ever spent on a course. I mean, I knew how much he wanted to win the Masters, how much it meant to him. He had it right in his hands, and he let it get away. And I don't think, even though I'm not a big Nick Faldo fan, I don't think he ever gets the credit he deserves for shooting 67 and being there just in case he had the opportunity, and he did.
Not dissimilar to the Bob Goalby 66 that everybody overlooks with DiVincenzo. One of the things that I wanted to find out was the Tiger Slam. Many people talk about the Grand Slam and how challenging that is, that time period from April to August. But the Tiger Slam, for him to go out and win at Augusta and having that period of time from August back through to April, what was some of the things that you did as a coach, not a teacher, but as a coach, to prepare him for that moment?
Well, he was so ready to play that year. Everything was firing on all cylinders. He felt comfortable with his swing. I said earlier in 1990 2000 when that happened, that he was the second longest driver in the game and was hitting 72% of his fairways. And with his short game, you couldn't beat him. And he didn't win the Masters that year. And then he went on and won the U.S. Open and the British, the PGA. And then we went to the Masters the next year. And, the writers are really weird. They don't like to see positives. They always talk about negatives. And there was this guy who wrote from Dallas. I couldn't stand Jeff Rude. Good name for him, too, because he was a rude bastard. But anyway, he was all over me. He said, well, it's not a Grand Slam, It's not a Grand Slam. He didn't do it in 1 year. It's not a Grand Slam. I said, yeah, I know that, but it's 4 majors in a row. I mean, I was in his house after he won the Masters before the U.S. Open, and on his mantle, he had all 4 of the real trophies, not the replicas they give you, because you got to give the trophy back after you have it a year. And there they were, all 4 of them. I mean, it was the damnedest thing I've ever seen. I'm looking at this, and now I'm listening to this Jeff Rude go on and on. It's not a Grand Slam. I said, all right, Jeff, let me put it in perspective for you. He won all 4 of these majors in a row. And I said, this is something even a stubborn SOB like you will understand. There has never been anybody walk on the planet Earth that's ever done that. So you call it whatever the hell you want to call it, okay? That's what I told the guy. He goes, well, it's still not a Grand Slam. Whatever.
Have you ever been intimidated? I mean, I think if Tiger Woods walked into any of our room, there might be a certain degree of intimidation in teaching somebody like that. Have you ever been intimidated when one of the elite players on the PGA Tour or LPGA Tour has asked you to assist them?
No, really, I've always had a lot of confidence in my ability. I've got a good track record. I've really never messed anybody up. Anybody that's ever come to me, whether they stay or not, they've always gotten better. So I'm a great student of watching good players play because I like learning from them. So I've watched them all play. I mean, I watched them I've been teaching tour players 35, 40 years. I've been on practice tees at every tournament forever. And even when I'm not working with someone, I'm watching all the good players. I want to see how they do it, and I want to see how they're swinging, and what are they doing, and what's different than this. So I've never been that way. I've always taken it, number one, as an honor that they felt good enough to call me, and also as a challenge. I'm challenged to do this, and I've always had a tremendous amount of confidence in my own ability to help people. So it really hasn't bothered me. I mean, it's the only time I'll tell you a funny story on myself. The only time I've ever been really nervous in my life, I think I was about 16. And I was playing out at Meadowbrook with my dad, a guy by the name of Corny Shields, and then this guy named Ben Hogan. And I've never played with Mr. Hogan before, and he was my father's best friend. I mean, I've known him forever. He's always over the house cooking steaks and drinking. And so, I'm playing with Ben Hogan. I'm a pretty good little junior player. And boy, I'm so nervous. I'm a cat in a room full of rocking chairs, man. I mean, I'm moving around and I'm fidgety, and we get up in the first hole, and they've changed the course since then, but the first hole is a little dog leg to the right, and it was perfect to hit a little fade there. So I'm going to tee off on the right side of the tee. I'm going to show this Ben Hogan my little hot slider here. Boy, this is going to be good. And I was wearing a visor, and I remember I set my ball down by the tee, and about 2 inches from the tee were Ben Hogan's shoes. And he must have been this close to me. I'm like, damn, give me some space here, man. So I'm looking at these shoes, and I actually picked my ball up and moved it over about 2 yards and got back behind it. And damn, he closed the gap again. Boy, I fanned this thing out in the right rough so fast. It was unbelievable. I was a nervous wreck. But I remember we were walking down like the 3rd or 4th hole, and Mr. Hogan says, Butch, just relax. It's just golf. That's all it is. It's only golf. It's really playing with God. Are you kidding?
Yeah. Has there ever been a touring professional that you wouldn't coach? Not that you couldn't coach, you didn't have time for, but somebody that you went, you know what, I'm just not going to coach them.
I've had a few that as I've gotten older and have the ability, that I don't really like them. Don't like their personality, so I've told them that I was too busy. That's kind of my way of telling them. There was one tour player, I'm not going to say his name because he found religion and became a really much better guy than he was before he found religion, and unfortunately he's not with us anymore. And he kept calling me at Lochinvar when I was at Houston, and I just wouldn't call him back. So I was at a tournament, and he goes, "Hey, Butch," I said, "Hey, how you doing?" He says, "You better get a new staff. I bet I've called your place 5 times. They're not giving you the message." I said, "Yeah, they gave me the message." And he went, "Oh," just walked away. But you can say, "Yeah, well, you're arrogant, you're this or that," but I put my life and soul into these guys that I teach. You know this. All the guys that I teach, they call it our team. We're all on a team. And Ricky loves to call it Team Harmon, like we're a racing team or something. And so I put my whole heart and soul in everything I do for them, anything I can help them with off the course. And so at this point in time, I'm not going to really spend that much time with someone I don't really feel like being around. So that's just kind of.
Do you limit the number of players that you're going to work with?
Yeah, I'm down to 4 now, which is perfect. I have 2 others. Nick Watney, who left me, and Gary Woodland, who left me, have come back. But Nick, unfortunately, has had to take a major medical, and Gary is the 5th one now. When Phil decided to go in a different direction, I had that spot open. But that's the most. I can remember the Masters years ago, and I had 8 guys playing in the Masters. And like happened to me Sunday, my back went out on me on Tuesday. And I can remember being at the golf course. I get there about 7 in the morning and didn't leave till 7:30 that night, sun up to sundown, and my back was so bad, and I was sitting on a little shooting stick trying to teach, and I said, man, I gotta pare down. I can't handle all these guys. And unfortunately, a lot of the guys, and I was very honest with them. I said, guys, I love you. I can give you help whenever you need it, but I just don't have the time to do it full time. And so 5's a lot, but 4 is the perfect number right now. People say, how do you get at a tournament? How do you know who to spend time with? Well, obviously there's a pecking order and who you are and how long you've been with me and stuff. But I'm at the golf course at 7 in the morning and I don't leave till dark. So I'm always there. They know that I will always get them. I get their schedule of who they're playing with. The guys are good about playing with each other, so I can walk a practice round with 2 or 3 of them, sometimes 4 of them. And so that works out okay. But I live it. I mean, this is my life. This is what I do. I teach. I feel I'm pretty good at it. But it's important to me to always give, as I said to you earlier, give 100% of effort every time, never to let my mind wander. And I got to change mindsets for each one of them because they all have different problems. They all have different personalities. And it's been a challenge, but I like it. I like a challenge. I like doing it. It's something that I've always done and like doing.
One of the things that I've always admired about you is you've always been a coach. You've been a teacher. You understand stuff, but you're a phenomenal coach. And I know that there's a lot of people that are out there and they're trying to acquire this information on instruction. How do you tell them? What are the things that you would share to assist them with, A, when to become a coach from a teacher, and then B, what are the things that we need to do to become a better coach?
Well, I talked a little bit about that earlier because there's a big difference between teaching and coaching. Teaching, we are instructing a student to do X, Y, and Z. That's what we're doing. Coaching, we're coaching him to get better, whether it's mentally, whether it's physically. A lot of the difference in coaching tour players is motivating them, challenging them, mentally challenge them, physically challenge them, motivating them. Tell them, oh, I'd like to get you, I used to use this trick with Tiger Woods all the time when I wanted to get him to change something. And I'd say, well, we're going to work on this, but we can't do that now because it's going to take too much time. No, I want to do it now. I said, no, I don't think you can get it right now. Yeah, I can get it. What is it? Give it to me. And, and so I would use that a little bit. The other trick you have to have dealing with the high upper echelon players that I've dealt with is they all have egos. And you have to be able to trick them into thinking what you want them to do is their idea. So you plant the seed, you talk a little about it, and then you go away from it. And a week later, they'll say, I've been thinking about this. Maybe I should try. Hey, I like that. That's good, you dumb son of a bitch. I told you that. But I think you just have to know how to kind of make them think it's their idea. And coaching is motivating. You motivate. You've done the teaching part. Now it's motivation. As I said earlier, a lot of times you got to be a cheerleader instead of a teacher. You got to motivate them, and you've got to be positive. You don't want to be negative unless you're trying to kick somebody in the tail because he needs to get a kick in the tail. You always want to be positive and positive and positive. And I think I've always had the ability to do that. A lot of times I don't know what I'm going to tell the person. I just come up with something, and so far it's worked. But if your coaching is different. Teaching is X's and O's. That's pretty simple. We're going to do this. We're going to work on this mechanical. Coaching is you got to get inside their heads. You got to be able to motivate them. You've got to really challenge them to do things.
It's safe to say that coaching will likely be the same through an extended period of time of this game. Teaching, on the other side, has changed, is changing. Mario Guerra asked a question about where do you see teaching in 20 to 40 years, and where do you see the game of golf in that time frame?
Well, the game of golf is going to change tremendously because the size of the players is getting bigger and stronger. I mean, you look at a nation like China that's got 1,300,000,000 people in it. Hell, they may have 20 Tiger Woodses over there. They just haven't found them yet. So the players are going to get bigger and stronger. I don't know what's going to happen with teaching. I don't know how much more technology we can get than we have right now. You know, there's a machine. Vaughn Taylor talked about it when he won, this robotic machine. Have you seen that? The guys that invented it actually had one at the airport at Augusta last week, and they were staying in my hotel at the Marriott there. And I was just having a quick dinner at the bar the first night I got there, which was Sunday night. And they came over and they said, "Oh, have you seen this machine?" I said, "Yeah, I've seen pictures of it. I've never seen it." And, "Oh, you know, we've got it set up at the airport, and we'd love to have you come look at it." Like, yeah, I'm going to drive back to the airport to look at a robot swinging a golf club. But anyway, that's where we're going. I mean, you know, hell, pretty soon we'll be obsolete, and they'll have robots giving a lesson. Beep, 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 take it more inside. Don't, don't, don't. You know? I mean, I don't know where I really don't know where teaching's going. I know the game is going to get better because the players are bigger and stronger and they're better, and that's the way it should be. But I think, as I said earlier, and I stress this a lot when I talk to other instructors, is you don't quit using your eyes. Stop just looking at everything on a TrackMan, and stop looking at the video on every single shot the guy hits. Watch him swing. Watch the ball. Learn from the ball flight. The ball flight laws are huge if you can learn from them. And that's how those of us that have any age and those of us who came before us, that's how they taught, because we didn't have any cameras. My dad was probably the first innovator of using 18-millimeter film to take pictures, and he'd take his belt off and tie it around you for swing planes and stuff. And he had all these ideas, but you know, your eyes really are the greatest thing you have. Your eyes and your mind together are really the best thing you have in teaching. So use technology. I use it. Heck yeah, if it's out there, I want to see it, but it's not the end all.
It seems like there's almost an internal pressure from within us as instructors, where if we don't have a flight scope or a TrackMan or a body track or swing catalyst, that we're not looked at as a great instructor. And technology is something that certainly is of conversation on Golf Channel and with Brandel as well. But what do we do as a teacher to hone our skills without understanding necessarily the technology? Because go back to your point, it's all ball flight, right?
Well, I think you have to understand it, but you don't have to always use it. I mean, I run golf schools all over the world. We got every piece of equipment you can imagine because people are paying $6,900 a piece to come to 3-day school, so we have all the bells and whistles. I just don't think it's the end all. Yes, use it, but don't use it for everything. Don't make it the only way you give a lesson. Now, I've talked to some guys that say, "Boy, I love this because it's like 15 minutes out of an hour, the guy's not hitting any balls, and I can show him this." I said, "Well, then you better get better at what you're doing and get him hitting the ball better if you're looking to waste time so you don't have to watch the guy hit balls." I mean, I can't even believe you're admitting that.
Is there, when you look back at your instruction, do you have a regret in working with a touring professional for information that you should have done, should have changed, made this swing change, should have changed this grip? Is there something like when you look back through time that you said, "I wish I'd have done this differently"?
I think back in the early 80s, I would say that I wish I had been more forceful with some of the things I said when guys would want to dispute what you were trying to tell them, and I wasn't forceful enough to say, "No, this is what you need to do, this is why you need to do it, this is how we're going to do it." Other than that, no. As I said, I believe in myself. I've got 100% belief in myself and what I do. I get asked this question all the time: is there anybody that you've never taught that you wish you had a chance? And there was one player. I've never solicited anyone. Everyone I've ever taught on the tour has come to me. I've never put feelers out there. "Hey, could you tell so-and-so I'd like to..." I'm not like some of these go-behind-your-back teachers that do a video of one and give it to one of your players and say, "If you come to me, I can help you." I would never do that. I have too much respect for the game and for guys that do what I do. But Retief Goosen is the one player I wish I'd have had a chance to help, because yes, he's won 2 U.S. Opens, but he's lost so many big tournaments with a hook down the stretch off the tee because he backs up so much and he's got so much weight on his back foot. And I've always felt I could help him. Now, I would never push that on him, and I never had the opportunity to help him. But he was the one person I always thought I could have really helped. And my brothers always said to me, "Why don't you go tell him?" I said, "No, I don't do it that way. That's not how I do things. If he ever asks, I'll tell him." But I thought when I had a lot of success with Ernie might mention it to him. But then Retief got hurt and he wasn't doing anything, so I never got the opportunity.
Have you ever picked up a phone and called a coach who's working with somebody that you're not working with, and you see them going in a direction that you have thought, "I don't know that that's the best thing," and picked up the phone and said, "Hey"?
I've never picked up the phone, but for those of us that have been very successful at a high end with great players, we're kind of a small fraternity. Led was the first one. I came along. There's 5 or 6 or 7 of us that are in a kind of a small fraternity, and we share information all the time. I mean, Foley and I talk all the time about stuff. Half the time I don't understand him because he gets into all this little out spacey stuff there, but he's a good teacher, and I like talking to him. And sometimes I'll say, "Hey, I noticed you're working on Hunter Mayhem and you're doing this. How come you're doing that?" And he'll say, "Well, I want him to do this or that." And I'll think, "Yeah, that's pretty good. I just wondered why he was doing something that I thought was a little radical." And we all get along so well. I've never been this way in my life. I'm not a jealous person. I'm never jealous of anyone's success. I'm happy for anybody that does what we do when they have success. I've never been one of those persons that, "God, I wish I was him because he's got more money than me or he's got a nicer car." I'm just not that person. So jealousy doesn't drive me. Jealousy drives a lot of people. They're jealous of someone who has success. I look at people who have been successful in what I do, and I want to know why they're successful. I want to know, what am I not doing that I could be doing better? And Sean Foley and I had a long talk when he first came out on the tour, and he was really nice. And Sean's different. I mean, he has a lot of different theories on it, but he's been very successful. And he says, "I remember watching you and David Ledbetter on a range, and I said, I want to be one of those guys. And I worked hard, and now I'm here." And he and I get along so good. I bust his tail so bad because I can give some pretty good needles. And he never knows whether I'm kidding or not. And he was talking to one of the guys I was working with once, not giving him a lesson, they're just talking. I went up to him, I said, "If I ever see you talk to one of my players again, I'm going to lay you out flat right on this driving range." And I gave him my little mean look, and he's looking at me, "No, Butchie, I'm sorry." And I went, "I'm just kidding." And I gave him a big hug. I said, "I'm just messing with you."
There's a lot of conversation that's taking place in the game now. Where is fitness? Where is weightlifting? Where is all this going? You obviously spent an inordinate amount of time with somebody who I think really kind of started that with Tiger. Where is that place in the game? And is Rory going too far? Did Tiger go too far?
Well, Gary Player is the one who actually started it. I mean, I had a great conversation with him last week at Augusta about that. But fitness is a huge part of the game. I mean, look, the human body, especially your spine, is not built to handle all the torque and movement we put on it and the hundreds of thousands of balls guys hit. I worry about Rory because I saw Tiger get too bulked up. When we split up in August of '02, he wasn't as bulky as he was, and then he got bulky, and I think it hurt his swing a little in the way he played. And I look at Rory now, and he's getting really strong. I think fitness is very important, but I think you have to be just as disciplined in doing your exercises as you are when you swing a club. One of the young players that I used to work with who left and now came back, Nick Watney, is now out for the year on a major medical because he went to a trainer in Austin, and he blew his back out doing the wrong exercises. And so you really have to watch when you're telling people they need to go work out and get stronger. They have to get with the right trainers. They have to do the right things. And you can overdo anything. Doesn't matter what it is. You can overdo it. And I think as long as you're doing it the right way or for longevity, I mean, you've got to get your core stronger, obviously, because that has to support the rest of your back and your spine. But I think you can overdo it, too. So fitness is important. Nutrition is very important. You wouldn't know that by looking at me, but nutrition is very important on how they eat, and they've gotten so much better at all that. I mean, you look at everything that everybody's learned these days. That's why there's so many of these kids that are so good. I mean, they're into it. They're spoiled. They're flying around on their private jets, and everybody's kissing their rear end, and everybody's doing everything for them. But they're also doing the work. They work really hard to be who they are. So fitness is important. You just can't get carried away with it. I think most of Tiger's injuries came from the gym, especially his back stuff, because he liked to lift heavy weights because he's got this He-Man syndrome about him. And Rory looks really bulked up to me. And the guys were talking about it on the range last week at Augusta about, boy, look at, because he wears these tight sweaters.
He's wearing a small.
They're almost like poured on, because he's so proud of his physique. I'm wearing XLs, baby. I don't want you seeing what I got under here.
And black also, too,
yeah,
right?
Damn right. I'm disappearing up here. You kidding?
You look like Pete Cowan.
But I think fitness is important, but just make sure that if you're having people go to see a trainer, make sure they're being taught how to do it the right way.
So you're sitting in your office, phone rings, and it's Earl Woods. How does that relationship come to be? Where does that relationship start?
Happened in 1993. I was at a club in Houston called Lock and Bar, and the amateur championship was at Champions, and Tiger had just lost his match. I think it was right before the quarterfinals. And Greg Norman had won the Open Championship that year, and I'd gotten a lot of credit for his, and I'd never seen Tiger play. I'd heard about him, but I'd never seen him. I actually went over that afternoon and watched the last 9 holes of the match he lost because I was just intrigued to watch him play. And he called me, asked if he could bring his son over. I said, sure. It was a Friday afternoon. He came over on Saturday. Watched him hit balls for about 3 hours. He came back on Sunday, and that's how we got started. But it was interesting. I've still got the film from 1993. This little skinny kid. I've got it in our computers at work, and all the guys, all the tour players that come, let me see that skinny Tiger. They love watching how he was, and he had tremendous natural ability. You could see it. He was very unpolished. He got the club a little across the line, dropped the club under, had no strength, flipped it over coming down. He actually used to wear a spot on his right, under his wrist here, where his hands would rub because he flipped it so much. But God, he could just hit it so far, and he had this ability. I said to him, you get a kick out of this. I said on the practice day after I watched him for about an hour, I said, Tiger, every good player in the heat of the battle has a go-to shot off the tee when you have to drive a ball into the fairway. What's your go-to shot? He goes, I just hit as hard as I can, and I go find it, and I hit it again. I'm thinking, well, this is a cocky little SOB. And then the more I got to know him, that's how he played. He just hit it as far as he could, and he went and found it. And, and through the years and polishing up and changing the swing and making it better, and he couldn't spin a wedge shot. I mean, it was hard to believe, as good as he was with a wedge. Couldn't make a wedge shot spin. We'd work for hours how to do it. When he was an amateur and he'd go play at the Masters, I'd have him play practice rounds with Oathable and stuff just so he could learn how to spin it. Tiger was like a sponge. He just wanted to learn. He always wanted to get better. And I think that's probably been his Achilles heel, too, is he always thinks he can get better, and that's why he's always changing his swing. But his work ethic was incredible. I mean, he always wanted to be the best. And Earl Woods was a tough guy. He wasn't a guy a lot of people liked. We had a bond because we're both Vietnam veterans. I was in the infantry, he was in the infantry. We both fought in combat and stuff. So we had that bond, and I think that's why he trusted me with his son. But there was no internet in those days. There was nothing. I mean, we'd have these cameras with these little cassettes, remember, and he would film stuff in California. Then when he went to Stanford, I wanted to buy him a camera to take to Stanford with him. The coach says, no, you got to buy 3 of them because we got to give them to the team, with all the damn. And so I had to buy 3 cameras, give them to the team, which I did. And then he would shoot stuff, FedEx it to me. I would look at it, call him up on the phone, tell him about this and that, because there wasn't internet, there wasn't a way we could do it, and that's kind of how we did it in those days. And
1997, he goes out. He has what you described as an extremely proud moment for you, and now we're going to change the swing. How does that come to be? And when you start to format the process of where you're going to take that swing, how you're going to change that, what was the first thing and what was the hardest thing to change?
Well, he got the club shut at the top. And we had been changing it a little at a time. It started out about here, and I had gotten it to about here, and we wanted to get it about there. And I was doing it through periods of time. And he said, God, I've played so good this year. I said, yeah, really? You played better than anybody who's ever played. I've never seen. But I got to get this club position at the top. I said, we'll work on it. I said, I've already been doing it without you knowing it with some of the things we're doing. He goes, no, I want to do it all right now. And so in 1998, he only won 1 tournament. He completely changed that backswing position, which made him even better. And then all of a sudden he went on to be really phenomenal from there. But he loved to challenge himself. He would always make himself better. And it didn't matter if he shot 60, he wanted to shoot 58. I mean, it just was the way he was. And I think that was good and bad. And I think the bad part of it was that he's changed his swing about 5. Who knows what he's going to come back with now? He's changed because his body's going to be different. But he always won when he changed it, because just his talent level.
When you started to do that, and you started working on the face and also working on the plane, not going across the line, and I've heard you share your thoughts about whether you'd rather lay it off or rather across the line. Was there one drill that you all did, or were there a number of drills that you worked on to get that club in that spot?
The drill we did the most was take it up to the top and stop and make sure it's right, and then start your swing there from it. If he was here today, he would say, damn you made me do that hundreds and hundreds of times. I hated that drill. But that was the only way he could feel where he wanted to go. We could get the path and get him there, and then at first I'd fix him in that position and then make him hit a ball from there. And literally you'd go up to the top and stop, and then you rock it back for momentum and you come back down and hit it. It's no different than having the guys start here and go up. But we used that drill a lot for about 3 months, and he used to hate it, but he knew he had to do it because he had to get in that position, he had to feel it.
I know you respect all these coaches that are out there, and I know that you worked really hard at building that golf swing. I remember spending some time with you, and you showed me that swing, and you made a comment to me. But what was it like emotionally when you started to see, after he left, to see that swing be changed?
Well, you know, I can remember when I was younger, and my dad would help all these tour players, and they'd win tournaments, and then they'd go to someone else. And I said, Dad, I can't believe so-and-so, you helped him so much, and he went elsewhere. He goes, what's wrong with that, Butch? I said, well, that's not right. He goes, well, maybe he thought he learned as much as he could learn from me, and he wanted to go learn from someone else. So, you know, was I upset when he said he wanted to go in his own direction? Sure, I thought we had a great run together, and my feeling was, if it's not broken, I don't think we need to fix it. We just need to do maintenance. But he wanted to overhaul it. Graphite had just come into then. He wanted to use graphite, and I didn't want him to. I wanted him to stick with a steel shaft. He wanted to hit the ball further. I could already see the Haney influence, because O'Mara and Tiger were friends, and at the start of 2002, he was already wanting to change his backswing, and I kept trying to harp on that, and so that was fine. You know, we had a great 10 years, won 8 majors and a zillion tournaments, broke a lot of records. He went on and had a great career with Hank, you know, won a bunch more tournaments and stuff, and so who's to say it's right or wrong? But I think he's changed his swing so many times, and when, before this last surgery, he looked lost to me. He didn't know what swing he was trying to use. And you know, and then you get, I mean, if you ever thought Tiger Woods was going to get the pitching yips, I'd have bet you a lot of money that wasn't going to happen. And then last year, it was sad to watch. I mean, I remember in San Diego, when he walked off the course because he said his back hurt, I was there. I actually think he was embarrassed. I think he was embarrassed, and that's why he walked off. Now, I've said this to friends of mine, and I'll share it with you here. I'm not sure that Tiger Woods can ever come back. God, we hope so, because the game is, wouldn't you love to see a strong Tiger Woods playing against these kids?
When you say come back, do you mean attain the level that he was at, or just participate?
Yeah, I'll get to that, because I don't think he can be mediocre. I don't think his ego would let him be mediocre. And I think with his health issues and how long he's been away from the game and how much the game has changed, I'm not sure he can ever be the Tiger Woods we remember again. And I'm not sure that his ego will let him do that. I mean, it was sad watching him last year, the way he was playing. So I hope he comes back and he's healthy, and I hope he can play again, but I'm not sure that's going to happen.
Let's jump back to this coaching thing again. How much coaching were you doing with Tiger? Because when I look at Tiger, I feel like when his father passed, and obviously when you all separated, I didn't feel like he really had a mentor in his life. How much coaching were you doing with Tiger as opposed to teaching?
Oh, I was doing a lot by then, because his swing was already really good, and it was more motivation, more just trying to get in his head and get him right. He's such a great competitor. I think what a lot of you don't know, that you know that Tiger Woods won 6 USGA events in a row, 3 juniors, 3 amateurs. No one's ever done that. What you don't know is every one of those finals matches went to the last hole or beyond, and he won every one of them. And he didn't know how he was going to win. He just knew he had this ability to reach down inside and make it happen. And he almost was at the point where he could will things to happen. I mean, he was a pretty amazing guy. I used to tell him he really wasn't that good. He was just shot in the rear end with lucky stars, and everything he did turned out good. I said, because I watched you play blackjack in Vegas, and you can hit 15 and get 21 more times than anybody I've ever seen. So you're just not that good. You're just lucky, kidding him. And He was amazing. I mean, he's truly, Jack Nicklaus to me is the greatest champion. There's no doubt about that. But Tiger Woods is the greatest player I've ever seen play golf. He's just, and I've been around a long time. I've seen them all. He was special.
Can you build greatness, or are people they're just going to be great?
People say, can you build talent? No, you're born with talent. You can make talent better. You can look at weaknesses and make them stronger, but you're born with a certain heart and soul. I mean, he had the heart of a champion. He had this desire to beat you, and he learned at a young age. For example, he learned how to control his breathing as a teenager in between shots when he'd get so mad or so hyped up through breathing exercises from way down in his stomach in between shots that he could take his heart rate down to a resting heart rate before he hit every shot. And he had Jay Brunzer, who worked with the Navy SEALs and stuff, helped him learn how to do that. The biathletes in the Olympics do that. They'd have to ski and then shoot. They have to take their nervous system down. And he learned how to do that at an early age. I never even heard of anybody doing that before. I said, wow, that's amazing. How the hell do you do it? And he told me I couldn't do it. And I said, heck, I'd get out of breath trying to do this stuff. So I gave my guys a 10-yard rule, because I don't think it's good not to get mad. It doesn't mean you have to throw a club and swear and say stuff, but if you keep aggression in you, it can only hurt. It changes your nervous system. So I used to give them a 10-yard rule. I said, you can get as mad as you want. Wish the hell I'd given myself this rule when I played. You can get as mad as you want for 10 yards, but then after that 10 yards, you got to let it go, because you got to go hit this shot. And someone will say, well, it's going to take me 15 minutes to walk 10 yards. Oh, that's fine. Just by the time you get that next one, we got to get it over with, because if you're still thinking 3 holes ago of some bad shot you hit, you've already blown your chances.
You look back at the era that you mentioned, the Hogan era and those players, and obviously now the modern era. Who's the best ball striker that when you think about the best, who is it?
Ben Hogan was the best. Next to him would be Trevino. He could control his ball through the air better than anyone. And then I'd put Tiger Woods in there in 2000. His control of a golf ball was miraculous. And today I'm not sure there's anyone that is that close.
Is there any commonality between those 3 players that you've referenced? You talked about how impact is the most important thing. Were those impacts similar? What they do similar?
I think the important thing for me of the 3 of them was controlling their ball through the air. They had the ability to hit every shot with the same ball flight that they wanted to hit it to. In other words, if you hung a hula hoop out there, every ball would go through that hula hoop, because the contact was so good, the strike was so good, the club face angle was so good. When we played, didn't have driving ranges. You still had caddies out there shagging your balls, so you'd have 30 or 40 caddies out there with your ball, and you'd get where you're swinging pretty good, and every ball would pretty much go to the caddy, but some would be higher, some would hit a little off the toe, a little in the heel, they'd travel a little different. But Ben Hogan and Lee Trevino especially, their club and ball contact was so good. The ball just had this flight to it and this sound to it when they hit it, and Tiger got to it in the late 90s, early 2000s. He got to that where he controlled that ball through the air better than anyone, and it's pretty impressive when guys get to do it. You see it occasionally in Jason Day. Jason has that, but then he gets off. You saw it with Jordan last year. He had the ability, and then he gets off. Rory was good for a while. Now he's a little shaky with it. Nick Price was really good at it with iron games. His iron trajectory was good. But for me, it's more trajectory that they hit the ball. The more you hit the ball up here, the harder it is to control how far it goes. The more you can bring that flight down to here, it's with iron shots, it's much easier to control how far it goes.
Do you think that's a function of the game of golf, the modern game of golf, which is obviously played at a much higher level, and to that end, players' inability to be able to hit partial shots as successfully?
Well, we talked about, one of the gentlemen up here referenced Justin Thomas, a fine young player, and I said he's not going to be as good as he can be until he learns how to control his ball flight. Every shot he hits is an all-out 100% shot. He doesn't have any three-quarter shots, and you watch the great players, and they don't have that three-quarter shot. Jordan would have been much better off on 12 the other day and not trying to hit that shot so hard and just make a nice little three-quarter, take the ball down a little and trap one up there in the middle of the green, which is, it's easy to say sitting here. I mean, he was trying to hit the right shot, but You watch the guys who are really good, especially on greens that are a lot of like you have here in the Met section, old school with greens that are sloped back to front. You've got to be able to take the spin off the ball so it doesn't hit up here and zip back off the green. You watch these young players, and a lot of them spin the ball too much. We try and teach them to change the ball flight, change the angle. They make contact with the ball, so the ball will one bounce and stop instead of spinning so much. Because the harder and steeper you come at it, the more spin you put on it, the more it goes up.
Butch, one of the most, I think, talked about instructional books that has come out is obviously Brandel's book, and you and I have shared some thoughts on that. He makes a statement in his book where he says that modern golf instruction is so massively incorrect as to destroy blah, 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 blah. And he talked about the left foot. You mentioned that, obviously. And your father wrote an article in Sports Illustrated of the importance of keeping that foot to the ground as a rule. When you read that book and you hear that philosophy about modern instruction, and knowing the influence that you, your brothers, your father have had in all of our directions as coaches, where do you walk away with that?
I had a conversation with Brandel last week about that, because he's doing Golf Channel, and at Augusta, at the back left side end of the range are all the studios for all of us that do, and in between he was on, I was on. I asked him about that. I said, I read your book, said it's entertaining. I said, I didn't like the shot you took at teachers. I said, as you not being one, I didn't think it was very fair, and now we're very good friends, so it wasn't me trying to be an ass. I said, you not being a teacher, these are just your opinions. I think you stated that a little wrong. He says, yeah, I probably stated that a little harshly. He says, but I wanted to make my point. I said, well, I get your point. I said, there's nothing wrong with lifting the left foot up if you need to be able to do it, but the problem with lifting the foot up is you got to get it back down. I don't have any problem with I tell people to do that all the time. If they can't turn, I have them lift their left foot up, just so they can make the turn and stuff. But I think the way he said it made it look like all of us here are doing things wrong because we're not telling everybody to say. And that was my gist when I talked to him about it. And he and I are good enough friends that I could say that to him. I said, I said, even I took offense to you putting it that way. He goes, well, you're not, I'm not talking about you. I said, yeah, but you're talking about us as a whole to do what we do. And I said, I just thought that was a little harsh.
And given the article that your father wrote in '65, we also know that Bobby Locke wrote a book in 1953 after his great success, and he mentioned the exact same thing of the importance of keeping the foot to the ground. To his statement, it was detrimental. And when I look at your players, there isn't a real commonality in what they're doing in their motion, except the lower body work seems to be fairly consistent.
Well, they're all flexible enough to do that. They're flexible enough to make a turn and not lift the foot up. And if you can do that, I think it's better, because once you get it up, there's not a lot of weight on it, number one. Number two, you got to get it back down. Does it come back down this way? You look at Patrick Reed, because his spin's that way. Ben Hogan, actually, he never wrote this, but I heard him, my dad, because on a driver, his heel would come up just a fraction, but he would put it down this way. Instead of letting it go, he would bring it up just a fraction, but he made it kind of go down that way, which I thought was a little strange.
Sets it down like Kenny Perry.
Yeah, just to jam it into the ground.
And through his career, that heel, one of the things that in the videos, his heel gets closer and closer to the ground as he goes farther into his career. Butch, one last thing. I know as a coach, I've obviously admired all the things that you've done and very grateful for everything that you and your family have done, and looked at how you've taught people, not taught golf swings, but taught people. What are some of the books that you've read? I know you shared with us about John Jacobs. What are some of the books that you've read that all of us that are striving to become better coaches could read to assist us with improving?
I liked Nicklaus's book, Golf My Way. I thought it was very good. You got to realize when you write, those of you in here, and there are some of you here who have written books, I've written books, when you write a book, it's pretty generic. You're pretty generic in what you're saying, something that covers the whole scope of the way everybody swings. But I got a lot out of practical golf. When I've written the books that I've written, whether it was the 4 Cornerstones or the Playing Lessons, these various ones, I tried to be more practical in the way you would play. I think Mickelson's short game tape is interesting, but confusing to the average player with a hinge and hold and ball either front foot or back foot. that's just how he does it, which I thought was interesting. There was an old tape, if you can find it, that Sebi did. It was filmed in Dubai, boy, a long time ago. I can't even think of the name of it right now. I've got a copy of it, Michael, at work. Don Callahan has it, and I'll get you the name of it, and you can put it out there. It's a phenomenal short game tape. I mean, it's freaking unbelievable how good it is when he talks about how he did stuff. And these old timers did everything with their hands. Everything they did was with their hands. It was beautiful so I think that for me, I read everything. I try and read everything. I try and watch everything, and I try and take a bit out of here and a bit out of there. It's like I told all of you today, the best thing in the world you could ever do is go to the seminar with the guy you disagree with the most, because you're going to leave there having learned something you didn't know when you walked in, which instantly has made you better at what you do. But, I'm a guy that likes to read stuff and look at stuff. I like to hear what people are saying, how they do stuff. I may not agree with it, but it doesn't mean I'm right or wrong. It just means they have a different way of saying it. But I like listening to other teachers teach when you have the opportunity. I can't tell you how many guys come and watch us teach golf schools every year. I'll have guys call me all the time. Can I come? Sure, come on. We'll put you to work out here. You can come hang with us and just listen to what we say. I hate these guys that I see on the range every now and then that we call them the golf whisperers. They have to go up and whisper, okay, this is what I want you to do. Nobody can hear this now, okay? Shoot, you didn't invent golf. Golf's been here 200 years, dude. What's wrong with you? You think you invented the damn golf swing? You got to whisper it to the guy? Come on, we're not a bunch of idiots out there. We know what the hell's going on. I mean, that's why I like sharing information. That's what it's all about. You learn from me, I learn from you. It's a win-win for both of us. I get the biggest kick out of some of these guys. They don't want to say something out loud like they freaking invented something. I told you when I started, I've been pretty successful at doing this. I haven't invented a damn thing. Everything I know I've learned from other people. And so it's funny to me, David Ledbetter and I were having a great conversation last week about his, he read his new A swing and stuff. And I said, because I had read the stuff, I said, let me ask you some more questions about it. And whether I agreed with it or not, I wanted to hear what David said. I mean, all of us that have made a very good living at teaching owe a big thanks to David Ledbetter, because he's the first one that made people understand that you pay more money for quality education. He's the first one that did it, and I say that all the time. I mean, the reason I get to make what I make is he was the pioneer of that. And I don't necessarily always agree with his stuff. He doesn't always agree with my stuff. It doesn't mean either one of us are right or wrong. It just means we have different ways of doing it. But the A-swing thing kind of intrigued me, because I read about it, and I just wanted to pick his brain about it. So how's it going, this and that? And it was pretty interesting to listen to. Not sure I got it all, but I liked what I got.
Butchie, we all love what we've got today, and we really appreciate everything that you and your family have done for the game of golf and for golf instruction for us in the Metropolitan PGA. And as one of those beneficiaries, I just want you to know how grateful we all are.
Mike, I grew up in this area. This is where I'm from. This is really where I learned to play golf. And so I've been trying to get where I could schedule this for you for a couple of years. And I told you my schedule is out a year in advance. I mean, we're in April, and my 2017 schedule is pretty much geared to all this. So I always said, if you can give me enough time, it would be an honor to come back here and be with you. So I've loved every minute of it. This is a cool setting. Boy, you get to eat lunch while you listen to us bullshit.
You get to eat too. We're going to let you eat.
I haven't noticed any wine bottles go around, Noah.
That's for tonight. It only took us 10 years to get Butch here today.
Number one, and I'll stand up in a minute. It's going to take me a while to get up. I'm not going to be pretty with this back thing I have going right now. But for me, to look around and see so many of you take off work to come hear me today, that's special.
You bet. Thank you very much for giving us your time. Butch Harmon. Thank you, my friend.
My pleasure.
Thank you for everything.
My pleasure. Thank you. Oh, shit. Thank you. Wow. Thank you very much. It's wow, that's humbling. Thank you.